and I'm going to share my screen and we can get started. Right, so can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Can you see this PowerPoint?
Yeah.
All right, let's get going then. All right, so this, hopefully it's not too long a meeting, and I'm going to try and keep you guys as involved as possible. But this is all about how to watch film. Just a quick warm up. Does anyone recognise this photo?
Yeah.
Go on, Ryan. Since you were so keen.
That wheel route, huh? You watch film? Watch this.
Rachel McCaffrey.
Yeah. So we all know where this is from, and it's a great clip. It's obviously like lots of people have watched it, but what it highlights is the importance of watching film. Cam's obviously massively cocky, and even lets the defense know that he's going to score on them. But yeah, highlights the importance of watching film at the NFL level, obviously, but that trickles down into our level as well. It's something that really helped me develop my game when I started in my third year. So the plan for the session is to go through this PowerPoint and then to have a look at the 6 plays that Coach Lindsay shared with you a couple of weeks back now, and sort of compare and contrast what you guys submitted to what I would say from this PowerPoint is expected of you when you're watching film. And then we'll sort of do a bit of what Coach Preston did on Sunday and extend it maybe, where we're looking at those 6 plays and talking about my thought processes and why I made the decisions I made, and kind of get you guys involved to see if you would make the decisions any differently. What's really important to point out at this stage is that film study can be really complicated. You can analyse things to the finest details, and end up observing stuff that isn't necessarily that important. So hopefully this PowerPoint, which I'll share with you, and this mindset that you should adopt from it, will simplify things and make your film study more efficient. So, obviously putting in the time is really important. When I was starting in my third year, I was trying to watch film most nights, even if it was for 20 minutes or so. But the most I ever spent watching film was over my summers. So make the most of this time that you have now if you have got some free time over summer, to watch some film from the 2019-2020 season, and if you've got any tape of yourself, to watch that. Make the most of your time before coming back in September. Watching film, it's going to be probably the most effective thing you can do to prepare yourself for the new season. So if we get started, the way this PowerPoint's laid out is we're going to have 9 areas of film that you need to sort of be aware of every time you're watching a play. And in the top left, we'll have something to say that you should write when you're taking notes for you to come back to. And then we'll break that down into pre-snap, post-snap, and post-play, if that makes sense. So just pay attention to what's in the top left and the top right, and then obviously the title of each slide. And then it will summarise at the end. But to start off with, the first thing you need to do when you're watching a play is to put it into context. And the first thing you need to identify is the situation. And this is definitely something you need to write down when you're watching film. You need to know what the score is at the time. You don't have to write down every single play, but you need to be aware of what the score is, how much time the offense has to go down the field and score, and also obviously the down and distance, because without context to the play that you're watching, it doesn't. It's pretty useless to just look at a play with, in a totally objective view. There needs to be some context to it. So you need to identify the situation of the player that you're watching. Also, guys, if you have any questions, just butt in whenever you want. But any questions at that point, just give me. I can't really see your faces at the moment, so just give me a yes or a no.
Nah, I'm good.
So, right. So number one, situation. Number two, you want to be writing down what you see from the offense, and the personnel. So you can use terms like 21 personnel, 11 personnel, 22 personnel. And what that is the number of running backs and the number of tight ends. It's the first thing I would do to identify the offensive setup. So you would usually see at our level 11 personnel, so one tight end, one running back. And once you identify those two positions, you then have a good base to sort of decide on what the whole formation of the offense is. So find out how many running backs, how many tight ends are on the offense, and then try and describe a formation of sorts, whether you've got trips, you've got 2x2 with the receiver set. And if you're watching CUDA football and you're familiar with the terms of the CUDA offense, then you should be saying whether it's dirt or dual or pro, plow, that kind of thing. And as a little side note, you don't necessarily have to do this, but try and identify the players, maybe after a few plays of watching. Think about the players who look good on the screen. The ones that the quarterback might be looking at a favourable matchup for. If it's an offensive lineman, that dictates how much time the quarterback's going to have and from which side. So when you're watching film, try and identify which players look good and also which players maybe seem like a weak point. So that's number two, offensive personnel. It's definitely something you want to write down. And this is still in the pre-snap part of the film study. And then more importantly, you want to identify the defensive personnel afterwards. The quickest way, I think, to decide what formation a defense is in is to look at the shell, so the safeties and then the corners. Because if you look at the safeties, you identify one deep safety, they're going to be playing most likely cover one or cover three. If you've got two deep, they're going to be playing quarters or cover four or a cover two concept. So look at the safeties first. They might not always be on screen, which we'll get onto later. But then try and look at the corners. Are they in press? Are they quite off with their coverage? What their leverage is? These are the tells pre-snap that should help you identify what the coverage of the defense is. Then you want to look at the defensive front. So you can either have an odd defensive front, and I think I'm going to go into huddle after this. An even defensive front or a bare defensive front. So to explain what that means, can you see huddle, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not as clear. Here we have a four-man front, and this would be described as an even front. So you're looking at the two ends and then the two tackles. It's an even front because if you split the centre down the middle, you have the same alignment either side of the centre, if that makes sense. A bare front would be something like this, where the centre is covered by a nose tackle, and then an odd front would be, say, if we went back to this play here, and we had the tackle in this gap instead of over the guard. So if we move him here, we go from an even front to an odd front. So I hope that makes sense. So yeah, we've identified the shell, we've identified the front as best as we can. Then we want to decide and have a look at what kind of pressure are we expecting on the quarterback. One thing that I should have said at the start is it's really important to pick out the crucial plays of the game first. And as quarterbacks, we want to be watching pass plays, play action plays, before we move on to the run stuff, because you would hope that your coordinator and the O-line would be the guys to deal with the run plays. But when it comes to pass plays, you really need to know your stuff. So obviously you want to be well versed with the running game, as it will just develop you as a player. But it's more important to get the pass plays out of the way first and to really study those in detail before moving on to the run. So an important part of a pass play is where the pressure is going to come from. So look at the DNs. Are they in a 2-point stance? Are they in a 3-point stance? Are they outside of the tackle? Are they on the tackle? Are you expecting pressure from around the edge or through the middle? And also to pay attention for blitzing linebackers as well. So all these things, you don't necessarily have to write down in lots of detail, but come the end, you want to identify the defensive formation. So an example would be a 4-3 cover 2 zone defense. So that means 4 linemen, 3 linebackers, 2 high safeties covering the deep zones, and then 2 corners underneath watching the flats. And again, the same way we looked at offensive personnel and their appearance, we can do the same with defensive players. So which ones look good, which ones look like the weak point of the defense, so that we can start to go through the processes of what we would do as a quarterback when we're making a throw. So any questions at that stage? Like I said, I'll try and summarise, because I know there's a lot of detail at the moment. But number 3 is defensive personnel. The full thing, nice and simple, shifts and motions. Does the offense move at all pre-snap? And how does the defense adjust to that? So take a note of that. This is something, again, you're going to want to write down when you're studying film. Then we move on to post-snap. So we're running through the play, and the ball's been snapped from the centre, and the quarterback now has the ball. And the first step of the post-snap evaluation is to think about what in our pre-snap assumptions was correct. And this isn't necessarily something you write down, but you want to think about, okay, I was right about the safety coverage, or I was right about where the pressure's coming from. But then contrary to that is something that you do want to write down. Have I got, is that a notification in the chat? Coach, are you still with us?
Yeah.
Okay, just said that you'd left briefly. So something you do want to write down in contrast to what you've got right about your pre-snap is what you got wrong about your pre-snap. So you might say pre-snap, it looks like cover 3, but you might have safety rotation, bringing the strong safety back into the deep portion of the field, and it's actually more of a quarters coverage or a cover 4 look. You might have people showing blitz pre-snap who then drop into coverage. So you need to think about what you looked at pre-snap and how that was invalidated by what happened post-snap. So this is definitely something that's really important you write this bit down when you're watching film. Then it's just about playing the quarterback. So trying to identify the play that the offense is running. If it's a CUDA offense, it should be nice and easy, and it might even have it labelled in huddle for you. But if it's an opposing offense, what concept are they running? What routes are being run by the receivers? What protection is there from the O-line? And trying to look at all that you've written down and think, what would I do if I was playing quarterback right now? So then we're moving on to post play. So this is after the play is finished, and you want to take a note of what was the result of the play, and also evaluate how well you would have played quarterback if you were sort of making the decisions that you're considering whilst watching the film. So that's the penultimate stage. And then finally, as you're repeating this process throughout your film study, you basically want to answer that one question there. how does the defense that you're observing line up based on the situation that the offense is in? And if you can answer that question, then come game time, you're going to know, all right, it's 2nd and 10. I know exactly what they're going to come at me with. I've got this play. I know where I'm going to go with the football. I know where I've got to read. So if you can answer this question going into a game, you should have the utmost confidence that you can execute. And that's the whole point of film study, is answering the question of how does the defense play based on certain situations. So any questions at that stage before I summarize?
Could you just pop back to number 4 and number 8 real quick?
I'm summarising on the last page, so if you want to, are you writing notes down?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll send this PowerPoint across to you guys. And then if I just go to the summary page.
Yeah, come.
This sums up everything that I've gone through, and I appreciate it's a lot of information. But on the right of this table is the things that you want to be thinking about and writing down. So the situation, number 1, the offensive personnel, the defensive personnel, shifts and motions, the adjustments of the defense pre and post snap, the result of the play, and then once you've finished your film study, summarising what you've seen and identifying the patterns. And things that you can think about but not necessarily take note of would be what in your pre-snap evaluation is correct, what is incorrect, and how you would play the players as the quarterback and how well you would do based on the decision that you're making when you're watching the film. And like I said previously, focus on the most important plays first. We have a finite amount of time. Like I said at the start, film study can be really, really complex if you make it that. Hopefully this breaks things down into a repeatable process where you can look at the crucial plays in the game first and then move on to stuff that is perhaps less of your responsibility as a quarterback. But use your time efficiently. If you're watching the same play for 20 minutes and you've still got 15 more, and it's the night before the game, then you need to say to yourself, look, I need to watch more, because that one play can only tell you so much. If you get all your stuff out of the way early, then you can start micromanaging the detail. So I hope that makes sense. And to get you guys involved a bit more, I'm going to go into huddle. But does anyone have any questions before I do that?
You know, you were saying about offensive formations and the 2-1 I've never played with tight ends before. So is the 2 the tight ends or is the 1 the tight ends? Which one's the running backs?
The one's the tight end. So the first number is your running back and your second number is your tight end.
Okay, thank you.
It was just a way that I found useful. The same way you look at the defensive personnel, and my eyes go straight to the safeties. My eyes go straight to the running back and the tight end when I'm identifying the offensive formation. You might find a different way of doing that, but I think it's pretty universal that people would say, oh, look, that's 21 personnel. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you.
And all this PowerPoint is an extension of this video here, which also, well, when I share the PowerPoint, you'll be able to see. That's quite loud. But this is a video that Coach Preston showed me at the start of my 3rd year. And it's 4 minutes, and he probably does a better job of explaining things than I have. How to watch film. And this guy is called the QB School. So watch a lot of his stuff. I mean, this is really brief and a nice watch. But then if you see on the right, he's got a 45-minute breakdown of a Seattle concept or 4 verts concept. So he goes into things in real NFL detail. So it's a great channel to watch. There's loads of really good stuff on YouTube. So make sure you check some of his stuff out, and also watch that 4-minute video of basically what that PowerPoint was based on. So yeah, I'll come back into teams quickly. Just check the time as well.
Nice.
Yeah, any questions, guys, before I move on to huddle? Get you guys involved. All right, cool.
Can I chip in?
Yeah.
You'll see it at the level you're going to be playing at. Keep saying our level. A lot of the kind of concepts and stuff will be exactly the same play 1, then there'll be play 81. So once you've got a kind of feel for what the defense are doing, you're just then looking to see how they adjust the stuff. So, you know, they're going to come out in that 3-5, say our defense. What do they do when we motion the guy? What do they do when we come out in a weird formation? Those are the types of things you really want to get once you've got that basics down.
Yeah, so it's a good point. Like, especially when you first stick film on, you're like, well, I'm really dawdling through each play. But then you start to recognise the patterns, and then you're ploughing through 20 plays in the same space of time that you were tackling 3 at the start. So you just got to persevere with that. And like Coach said, there's a lot of repetition in the defences that are played and the offences that are played. So I'm going to go into huddle now and go back over the plays that were shared with you guys. So can everyone see that's the screen there?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through this play with those 9 stages, or 8 stages, because we'll probably take out pattern recognition, and I'll do that for you. And then we'll move on to another play, and I'll get you guys to break each step down. So, and you guys can see that now that it's gone into full screen?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So what I do, I take the play right to the point where the ball's about to be snapped. So that's gone here. Okay, so first thing is situation. Try not to look at huddle because sometimes it can be wrong and it kind of defeats the point of the exercise. But you can see in the back, it's got a 4th down marker, and you can see there's around 3 to 4 yards to make up. The score in the game, I believe we were trailing at this point, just coming out of half time. So we needed a score, 4th down, very big down. So it's a pretty high pressure play. And again, that's talking about the situation and putting the play in context. So moving on to step 2, offensive personnel. We've got 1 running back, 1 tight end, 11 personnel. Then we're looking at the receivers. We've got a guy split out to the left on the line, and then a two receiver set on the right, with a slot receiver off the line and a wide receiver on the line. So guys who are familiar with, previous CUDA playbooks, this is what we called dual in the 1920 season, as it says at the top here. So, that's offensive personnel. Then defensive personnel. And this is where it gets a bit tricky. And this is a theme that you'll recognise, is that sometimes you don't have the best tape and you can't even see all the players on the pitch. But if we do a quick count, we've only got 10 players in view here. So that means we have 1 player, and because of his depth, we can say he's a safety, who's not even in shot. So we have 1 safety who's so deep he's not even in shot. And it's likely that he'll be off to the left because of the angle of the camera. So we've got 1 deep safety. And if we look at this guy 87 here, let me just highlight him for you. Can I draw? Yes, this guy here, yeah? If you watch his movement pre-snap, this guy looks like a safety, right? He's adjusting. He was talking to his guy before, his other safety before the snap, and he's moved his alignment over here. So we identified 2 safeties, 1 who's not even in the shot, and this guy here who's kind of at a depth that would suggest he's a strong safety. And if we look at our corners, they look like they're in press, don't they? They're about 2 yards off the line of scrimmage. So we've got 1 deep safety, a strong safety, and 2 two press corners. So we're kind of building up the defensive formation. At the moment, it looks something like a cover one man. Now we look at the front, and if we move it back, we've got 3 down linemen. It's a bare front. So we've got a guy over the centre here. This guy's over the centre. And then we have 2 guys here and here who are just outside the tackles. So we've got a bare front with 2 ends. And then we go on to identifying where the pressure can come from. So we've obviously got 2 guys who are split quite far out wide, and then this linebacker who comes right up showing blitz. And then we've also got this guy here who could potentially blitz if you look at his motion pre-snap. So I think, let me just go back to the PowerPoint. Yeah, all right, so to summarize step 3, I'm seeing a 3-4 defense with a cover one man shell. And it looks like this strong safety is matched up with my slot receiver, and this outside linebacker is matched up with my tight end. So that's my assumption pre-snap. No shifts and motions in the play, and then we go to actually watching the play. So just play it one time through. I know we watched this play yesterday. And then we pause it before we start crying, as coach said. So what about our assumption was right? So I was saying 3-4 defense, cover one man. As the ball's snapped, you can see the corners, their eyes are glued onto the receivers that they're matched up with. So that's a good sign that we've got the coverage somewhat right. And then we see our tight end going on the out, and we see that this outside linebacker here goes with him. So we can kind of say at this point that our assumption about the coverage is correct. And if we watch our strong safety back here, he's going with our slot receiver on the right-hand side. So our coverage is right. Our pressure is also somewhat correct because we've got this linebacker here who looks like he's showing blitz. And then as we progress the play, he does blitz. But then we've got this guy who we weren't so sure about, who actually drops into some sort of spy zone. He doesn't really seem to have many passing obligations, but he's just watching me all the way. So he's waiting for me to break contain, and he's going to track me down accordingly. So we've done steps 5 and 6. Then it's about playing QB. So obviously I was the quarterback in this game. So this is the play that we had. Not that one. This is the play we had, and tried to get an accurate drawing of where we were in the field. So we're kind of on the right hash. So this is, in our season, what we call dual smash rhino. We've got, on the right-hand side, we've got a hitch and a corner. And then on the left, we've got what's called a switch concept with a slant from the wide receiver and then an out from the H-back or the tight end. The thing is about this concept is that it was a half field read. So pre-snap, I'd determine whether I'm going to throw to the right or to the left. And because I identified that we were dealing with cover one man, this is your man side to the left. And if they were in zone, you'd want to throw this side to the right. But because they were in man, I looked to the left. And as Coach Preston said yesterday, the only person I had to read was this Will linebacker. If he goes with the out, that leaves a lovely lane for me to throw the slant. If he stays here or drops into a zone and the corner goes with him, then I can throw the out. So going back to the play, you can see if we watch this guy here. Watch this guy here. He goes with the out. So it's one guy that I've had to read. You see my eyes are straight on him. He goes, I throw the slant. And it's as simple as that. And it's made that simple because of the pre-snap recognition. So what was the result of the play? Completed pass, fumble at the end. How well did I play QB? I think I made the right throw. So any questions about that before we make you do one? Right, so from a good one to a bad one, we're going to go for my interception play. Ryan, what's the situation?
Well, it's third down, isn't it?
Yeah. See, this is why you can't trust huddle, because up here it says 1st and 10, but you can see here that's third down. And what would you say the yardage is?
8.
I'd say it's closer to 6. It's 5 or 6. So what's special about third down, Ryan?
It's your last chance to really go for it before you have to make a decision.
Yeah. Yeah. So if I give you a bit of game context as well, we're trailing after an early touchdown. And we've driven up the field, made lots of yardage. We've got the defense on their heels, and we're in the red zone. So it's a really good opportunity to score, and it's third down. So would you say that's a high pressure or a low pressure play, Ryan?
High pressure. You got the momentum. You don't want to fuck it up.
Yeah. Yeah. So that puts the play into context. Danny, talk to me about the offensive personnel.
Okay, so you've got one running back in. I can't see quite beneath, past you. Is there a tight end there? I can't. Yeah. So that'd be.
I'm blocking him, but he's there. Yeah.
So that's an 11 personnel. Your doubles left. And have you got a receiver at the top? No, that's the tight end that I've just seen, isn't it? Oh no, there is a receiver up there as well. So doubles left, one on the right.
Yeah, I've got arrows. So you got this guy here who's our tight end, and then this guy here who's our wide out receiver on that side. So this is it's a flip of the first play I showed you. It was our formation called Dirt that year. And the R meant that the tight end was on the right. Well, not the tight end, but this wide receiver out here. If he was on the right, it was Dirt. If he was on the left, it was Jewel. Okay, right. Defensive personnel. Alec, how many? I know it's quite difficult. But how many safeties can you see? How many guys would you say?
I can definitely see one. Right at the back.
This
on
guy
the
here,
left-hand side, yeah.
Yeah.
Let me count 1, 2, 3, 4. Looks like you're missing 2 people.
Yeah.
So there's probably another safety.
Yeah.
I think 3, isn't there? 3 safeties in this?
Well, it's hard to say.
Unless I'm miscounting.
Because you really can't see this side. But what you said first off was spot on. You've got 2 people missing. So the assumption is that one of them could be a safety, because they're completely out of shot, so they must be to the left of me. And as you can see, in this area here, you've got like all your linebackers who we'll get onto later, and all your DNs, and D tackles. So we can make that assumption that they're perhaps playing with 2 safeties. Do you think that's a valid assumption?
Yeah, I reckon 2 safeties and maybe a corner. Maybe I'm like just cut off from the screen.
Can you see a corner in the shot right now? Could you identify whether there is a corner like visible at the moment?
Ooh. I don't think so, but maybe that guy I don't know how to describe it on the screen, but he's above that. There we go. Yeah.
That guy.
Yeah.
I mean,
Could-
you can't
He doesn't
necessarily-
really look like he's on the like tracking the receiver right now.
Yeah. So, what would you say about his positioning in relation? Just to help you out a bit, this guy is, like you're saying, over this guy, who's our wide receiver on the right-hand side. What would you say about the corner's positioning in relation to our receiver?
Well, it's a little passive. He's giving him like I guess he's standing at the first down marker around that line.
Yeah.
To try and
So-
prevent him from getting there.
So that's about a 5-6 yard cushion.
Yeah.
Okay. So based off that, 2 safeties, 1 corner that we can see, who's very passive, as you say, and 1 safety who's so far back, probably around 15 yards away from the play. What are the possibilities in terms of coverage that can be played?
Oh. Coverage. 2 safeties. Looks like 3 linebackers. So I don't know what the term is, but
Are you not familiar with defensive backfield coverages?
No.
Okay, so
I know how to count, but
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so if we just to go over it quickly, let's go back into the playbook. This isn't our play that we were running in that. If we have 1 safety deep, we're either looking at a cover. This is very general, but if we have 1 safety deep, we're looking at a cover 1, where this safety is responsible for all of the deep portion of the field, or a cover 3. So the way it becomes cover 3 is if these corners drop into deep zones. So you can imagine the field being split into 3 vertical tubes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is cover 1 if they're down here when the ball. This is just a big generalization, but if they're down here, we're looking at cover 1. If they retreat into a deep zone, cover 3, because we've got 1, 2, 3 guys looking at covering that deep portion of the field. If we then bring this safety up here, for example, then we're looking at 4 people covering the deep portion of the field, and it's cover 4. If we then have the corners down here, what do you think that would be?
Cover 2.
Cover 2, exactly.
Hey, all right, got it.
Yeah, does that make sense? Does that make sense to everyone else?
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, all right. So, I mean, it's let's get Callum involved. Based off of that, Callum, and as we said, we've got 1 safety deep that we can see, a passive corner, and then an assumption that there's 2 safeties on this left-hand side. What kind of coverage do you think they could be running?
I think that they're probably running cover 2 with the corners probably doing more like covering the flats probably.
Yeah.
But I also see that the corner with the arrow pointing at him, he's looking at you. I think, I'm not sure, but that kind of tells me that it's in zone as well.
Yeah, that's a good tell. If he's looking at his receiver, he's probably manned up. If he's looking at me, he's probably in zone. It's a good tell. Do you think, Callum, they could be playing cover 3? Do you see that there's a possibility they could be playing cover 3?
I don't think so.
What makes you think that they couldn't be cover 3?
Because there's the top safety that you can see in the screen. He looks like he's well. I think he might be coming over to kind of cover the top right of the field in case the isolated receiver goes deep. and the quarterback's going to be watching the sticks. I mean, just because it's quite short yardage, you know.
So, based off of, if we come back into the chat, based off of all that information, if you four guys have a little vote, cover 2 or cover 3. Doesn't matter if we're wrong at this stage.
I'm saying 2.
2.
Yeah, we're all saying cover 2. Okay.
Cover 3 wouldn't make sense.
It could be any chance of a quarter's coverage, cover 4. Do you think there's a possibility that the corner could retreat?
No, definitely not.
Thinking about the down and distance, I wouldn't get that. Why would they play 4 people deep instead of 2 people deep covering, and then they could have 5 people on the shallows?
Yeah.
They don't send any backers. They can play almost like a Tampa 2 and just have 5 people covering the distance.
Yeah, that's a good point. If we drop 4 men into coverage on a 3rd and 6, if we drop 4 men into the deep zones, there's going to be a lot of space underneath. So that's a really good point, Ryan. And another thing is kind of like what you're saying. We have a cluster of people here who don't look like they have any desire to cover the flats. So we're saying cover 2. All right. So I mean, you can see how. Yeah, go on, Ryan.
I just want to ask, how would you go about? I get doing all of the. You might be going on to it, actually. I get doing the safeties and corners. How do you even go about with the linebackers, whether they're going to drop into coverage or come defend the run? How would you even go about finding that out?
Well, again, it goes back to trying to identify things pre-snap and post-snap. And the main reason why you'd want to split it into those sections is that when you're on the field, you have a look in front of you pre-snap, and then something can change once the ball's come to you. So it's all well and good going straight to post-snap and saying, I know exactly what they're doing. But when you're out on the field, you're not going to have the privilege of knowing exactly what they're going to look like once the ball's in your hand. So you've got to decipher that.
No, I get that. I mean more, how do you go about trying to figure out the backers and what they're doing?
Okay, so if we move on from the shell, which we've kind of decided is cover 2, we'll go on to the front, okay, and then we'll get onto the backers. So hopefully that explains things. So we'll go to the moment just before the ball's snapped. Callum, let's go back to Danny. Danny, what do you see in terms of defensive linemen?
Well, I think you've got 2 that are over the top, and then you've got 2 that kind of look more like edge rushers there, I think.
So these guys are your tackles, yeah?
Yeah, and then you've got the 2 edge rushers. So you're on even. I can't tell if any's in front of the center, but I'd assume not. And then you've got 2 linebackers, neither which look like... Oh, no, 3 linebackers. I can't count. Neither which look like they're about to blitz. They seem to be quite in stances where they can quite easily turn around and drop back into coverage rather than run straight at you. So
yeah. So if we go back to what you're saying in terms of the front, we've got an even front. Got 4 guys, even front, and 2 very wide edge rushers in a 2-point stance. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, then we're going from front to blitzers or to pressure. So we've identified pressure coming from the edge, and then we're talking about linebackers. Danny doesn't think that they look like they're about to blitz. Alec, do you agree with that? Do these linebackers here, so 1, 2, 3, do they look like they're about to blitz?
No, they're not really, except for number 2. He's very bent forward, almost like, about to fall over and sprint.
Yeah.
But number 1 and 3, they look a little more passive, especially number 1. He's really looking to stay back, I think.
Yeah. Okay, so that's really good work. We've got 4 linemen, pressure coming from the edge, and obviously 2 guys up the middle. But our linebackers don't look like they're in a position to blitz. The middle guy is potentially that guy who could be blitzing. Does that explain it a bit better, Ryan, in terms of identifying what the linebackers are doing?
Yeah, it definitely does.
Yeah? Okay,
Yeah.
so, I mean, the thing is, at this stage, it all seems like there's so much to write down, so much to think about. But when you get into it and you're doing it on your own, it'll become second nature, hopefully. So to summarise the defensive formation, we're going with a 4-3, cover 2. Does everyone agree with that?
Yeah.
Four linemen, 3 linebackers, and they're playing a cover 2. So the corners are going to have the flat. Right. Then our next thing is to identify shifts and motions, which we don't have, so we can skip that. And then we're going to go into watching the play. Right, so let's play it through once and then we'll break it down more slowly. Right, let's play it. How's it doing at that speed? Right, so there's the play. Let's go back and break it down more thoroughly. Right, so the ball's snapped. I've got the ball now. Right. What do we think about when we talk about pressures? Do we think we've got that right? What are the linebackers doing after the ball's snapped? Are they blitzing or are they dropping back into coverage?
It's
They're
kind
not
of weird
blitzing.
though. Their first steps are all forward, so if you only had a second to glance at them, you may think they're blitzing anyway because they all do step forward before they kind of change the direction.
Why do you think they've changed direction? Do you think they recognise it's pass?
No, I think they're trying to throw you off.
Well, linebackers always step first to begin with, so
Yeah, you've got to remember these guys have run duties. And I know it's 3rd and 6, but we were a good running team, so we could have run the ball. So I think that's why they step up. But can we agree once we're in that position, they've identified it's a pass and they're dropping back into a zone?
yeah, how about that?
Okay, so right, next thing. So we're good with that. We've identified our front correctly. We've identified our pressures correctly. As we move it on a bit further, we can see there's a lot of pressure coming around the edge. And what about our safety and the corner that are in view? Especially that corner. Alec, what's that corner doing?
He's sticking to his man. He's like following him while keeping his eyes on you.
Right. So what about his steps? Like, is he staying in the flats or is he retreating?
He looks to me that he's watching the first down marker. I mean, he's going deeper than the flats, but I wouldn't go as far to say he's. I mean, I guess he is kind of going for the deep zone as well.
I wouldn't call it retreating. I just think, obviously, you can't stick to the first down marker. And if he drops a couple steps into his zone, he can come forward to make the tackle and stop it before it's hit the marker. I don't think he's retreating into a deep zone, put it that way.
Okay. What about the safety? What are we seeing from him, if anything?
It's not moving.
He's not moving. Okay. So to me, if you guys disagree, to me, the fact that he's not making an attempt to cover this portion of the field, if I can sort of scribble it, the fact that he's not attempting to cover this portion of the field tells me that he could be perhaps the only deep safety. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
Because if we go into huddle, right, this is our play. It's kind of ruining it. But if he moved out here and we had this guy up here, that would validate our assumption that it was cover 2, right? But the fact that he's staying in this vertical tube down the middle is telling me he doesn't have a responsibility to cover this area of the field, even though we've got a guy attacking it. And the fact that our corner is retreated is telling me, although we were valid to say cover 2 pre-snap, that perhaps we were wrong about that, and it's actually cover 3. Do you guys disagree with that? So
No,
this is the thing, we've identified that, pre-snap we made one assumption, but post-snap it's actually looking slightly different. That's why it's really important to break it down into those 2 stages.
I'm just confused. Where do you think the other safety is then?
So if we switch into what I could actually see, we had a safety around this depth, around 8 yards depth, who was over our Z receiver. So it was a cover 3, is what I identified with these. So the 2 corners and the free safety responsible for the deep thirds, and then this strong safety was either manned up on Z or on H, depending on which side of the field he was on. Coach Preston, do you agree with that?
Yeah, no. I mean, there's not a huge difference between cover 1 and cover 3 in terms of pre-snap alignment. It could be an either on that. If you go back to the film, the corner that you can see, to me, doesn't really bail like it's cover 3. If he was cover 3, you'd expect him to really drop into that kind of zone. Whereas to me, he actually follows the receiver on the far right-hand side when he makes a slight in route. His hips turn inwards like he's following him. So I'd say he was in man coverage with him.
Yeah.
But it's very marginal. He was definitely giving him a cushion. So
yeah, it is. It's hard as well because we said about him looking at the quarterback, but then his eyes do. It's mad. The fact that he's looking at, it seems like he's looking at me the whole way, but he's still able to track the receiver. Maybe he's been watching a lot of film. So if we go back into like our checklist, we're kind of moving on to adjustments and playing QB. So as coach said, it's very marginal, but my takeaway from the play was that we had a cover 3 with the strong safety matched up with our Z receiver, but giving him a cushion. 4 linemen, 3 linebackers, and our deep safety. So the result of the play, as you can see, is that I throw a pick. I get pressure from my left, which I don't see, and the ball sails over my tight end. I'm going to play it through once and then play it again slowly. Okay, so there it is. Free safety picks the ball. Right, just going through it slowly. This is a play we called pop. So we have the tight end faking a block on someone in this area, potentially the sandbacker, and then running a seam, and then the wide receivers running a post corner. And then on this side, we have a key. It's a play action pass, so faking to the running back and reading 1 to 2. So with all of that information, Callum, do you think regardless of the result, do you think I picked the right receiver to throw to?
No.
No. Why not?
Because there's like a man every single side of him, like within a couple yards. And well, I think that's the other safety on the far left of the screen, ready to pop him if he somehow comes down with the ball as well. The only ball that I can really see that's kind of on is the wide out receiver, or maybe the little screen key type thing on the bottom of the screen. But I can't really see the left side of the field, so I mean, you might be covered.
If we go back to what we were chatting about yesterday, the kind of middle arrow that he's highlighted over the receiver running the route. If he's matched up against the guy just stood to his left with his hands by his knees, so that guy is actually running to the far sideline. So that guy there that's covering him, his hips are in an awful position to be able to cover. So Leo needed to get his head off of Rory running the seam route and just float a ball to the sideline in a position where this guy's the only guy who's going to catch it. Yeah. In this case scenario, 3 and out is not the worst case scenario, because where are we? 20-yard line? I'm probably going for it on 4th down. So we live to get another chance, whereas Leo's put us in a position where they've now got the ball.
So let's go through. Ryan, do you agree with everything that Callum and Coach said?
Yeah, I think the window is way too small for the tight end, and that looking at the matchup on the outside, it's if you throw the right ball, it's near guarantee. But I would also just question, did you see the safety? Like, how deep was the safety on the left side over, is it 87?
Yeah.
How deep was he? Because that screen looks on if he can get to the outside.
Yeah, he was about 8 yards off.
I mean, that's more risky, I think, than throwing the corner, but it looks like it could be on.
Alec, do you have anything to add?
I would have definitely preferred, like, if I was in your position, I would definitely prefer throwing into space where the wide receiver is, the corner route, because, you know, this guy who's, I guess, on him doesn't seem to be really, like, he won't be able to keep up with that receiver. And if you just threw into space, if you didn't catch it, then so be it. You know, 4th down, get another chance. But if you did, that's a huge gain and puts you like 9 yards away from the end zone. Whereas if you threw that screen, you know, it's good, but it is a bit difficult to get the yards necessary to like feel comfortable going for a 4th down.
And Danny, do you have anything to add on top of what people have said?
Not particularly. I think the corner there's the best route. I mean, I think it's 87. He's got loads of space, but, you know, you'd have to turn into 91, and that's not an easy throw to make on any day, especially given the time that you had there.
Yeah. Okay. So everything that you 4 guys and Coach Preston said is right. It's a bad read from myself. This is the position right before I'm making the decision. So this is just not on this seam route from the tight end. I probably thought I could squeeze it in some window here between the linebackers or here before you got to the safety. But if you see that many bodies around your route here, don't throw it. What I should have done was flip my eyes to the corner, and sort of around this time would be the time I'd look at the corner. And as Coach said, he is in no position to cover a guy who's running away from him. And although there's pressure, at this moment in time, there's enough space in the pocket and time for me to get that throw off, because although it somewhat makes the ball to the tight end sail me getting hit there, that's not necessarily a problem if I'm throwing a corner route. I can afford to put a bit of air on it. So once I'd made a decision pre-snap not to throw the key, which if you were being, it's quite a conservative move to throw the key because it should be an easy completion, but you're relying on someone to make 6 yards after the catch. And the strong safety that they had was pretty good, to add a bit of context. So, yeah, I would have no, like, negative things to say if you thought, I see a lot of cushion to my left. Pre-snap, I'm going to throw the screen. But I said, it's 3rd down and 6. I'm not going to go there. I want to get more yards in the air. So if you're making that decision to go to your right and read the seam and then the corner, you should realise from this point, no, the seam's not on. And then from that point, yes, the corner's on. So it's a bad read. But we all make mistakes. And that's why it's important to come back to your mistakes and realise what you could have done differently. So does anyone have any questions about that play? And any sort of analysis breaking it down? I noticed it's already an hour gone, and I think that is everything I wanted to cover. But what I'd like you guys to do is, once I give you the PowerPoint, once you've tried to take in all the information that was thrown at you today, to re-evaluate the 6 plays that were given to you. Because I thought you, first of all, made a really good effort from the information you had, and you broke the plays down really well and included a lot of detail. But if we could get it into a format that's repeatable and makes it easier on you, using what I've told you tonight, then I think you're going to realise that you're noticing more about the play than what you first wrote down. Are people okay with that? Yeah, I appreciate it's a lot of information, a lot of me talking. I wish I could have got you involved a bit more. But yeah, go back and watch those 6 plays and dive into some other film if you want to, and watch your own film if you have it, of yourself playing. But I think that's all I need to say, unless there's any other questions from you guys. Coach, do you have anything to add?
No, just don't make it that difficult for yourselves. Get an idea of what the teams are trying to do. Write stuff down. Check it over. Hopefully your offensive coordinator is doing similar, so you should have the same sort of notes. But yeah, don't get too wrapped up in the film, but you do need an idea of what you're going to see on a Sunday before you get there.
Right, I'm going to stop the recording and